again, Steve here, and this morning I was listening to a guy do a speech, and he was talking about how it is that men were traditionally seen in society, and how gods were typically seen, very often the godheads anyways, were seen as men. And the concept of, within the Christian context anyways, and perhaps in other contexts as well, it was that God is masculine as father, which means that we're all children in a way, which goes along the lines of that what I was showing you earlier in that other video I did about the coffee chat book with creator above and then men and women and then what we create, right? So we're all like offsprings of that which creates us in a way. And I started thinking about the value of the family and how, with men and women working together as partnerships, we have this great value for the trajectory that children grow up into adults, right? And what I was thinking about is just the nature of women and then the nature of men, typically, and how this plays out. So what I wrote was that mothers protect from harm, right? They protect from harm children from emotional, physical, and mental pain. You see this with women. I remember when our kids were young. I remember the first time our daughter, she was just, I don't know, maybe she was a year old or whatever. She rolled off the couch anyways, hit her head, started crying or whatever. And I had grown up in a big family and had, seen lots of kids and whatever, but also I'm a man. And I was like, well, she would probably just cry for a while and that's fine. But my wife, she was so overwhelmed by this that we had to, and it was late at night, it was just before the kid was to go to bed. We had to go to the emergency room to have what if there was damage done and so on. So it's an example of women, and it's a very great, it's a beautiful thing to see in women because it's so important. Because if you think about it, women give birth to children who are completely helpless. They need an incredible amount of protection from the elements. They don't want, they can't communicate with you, so you can't yell at them and tell them that they shouldn't crap their pants or whatever. You can't be, there's no way that you can be abusive to them and so on. That has to be really protected. They have to be cared for. Women have got to be very conscious of what it is that the child is telling them in terms of their crying and what have you, to be able to finely tune the level of comfort for that child to be able to grow optimally, right? Because just like anything that's growing, if you stress something, it's going to be deterred in somehow. Like, plants in the spring, if you put them out and they get some frost, all of a sudden some of them die off and what have you. They have to be protected in that vulnerable state from all the physical, mental, and emotional pain that would come to them, right? However, that protection does not an adult make, right? So there's the role of the father. The father, then, historically, or the men in society, would teach growing children eventually how to manage the pain. Where the women want to protect them from it to avoid the pain altogether, the men are about to say, suck it up, buttercup, eventually, and learn how to deal with it. And through the example of the men and the teaching of the men, children can transition into adults. That's historically how it's worked. We've tried to put forward in society this idea that that's sort of old, that's old patriarchy, that's old fashioned, that's dark ages and what have you. But just because we're saying so doesn't make it so. And that's the thing is, we've evolved over thousands of years with certain ways of doing things that all of a sudden if we just throw everything out, like, oh, men and women can just work together. We never did except as husbands and wives and sisters and brothers and familial contexts and so on. But now it's like just throw a whole bunch of men and women to an office setting and go at it. Work together. See how it's going to work. Well, we don't know how it's going to work. That's the truth yet. We don't know. It's an early experiment. The same with this idea that, children don't need fathers. So you look at all these social justice warriors and what have you and so on, you can see that they don't know how to handle emotional pain. They don't know how to handle mental pain, and they probably don't know how to handle physical pain as well as had they had a father who loved them, who showed them the ropes along the way, taught them how to work, right? Taught them how to deal with people who would say mean things to them. taught them how to think and so on, right? Because women historically are not equipped to do that. So a mother historically is not equipped to do that. You see it all over I see it time and time again where mothers will treat their growing children or growing boys and so on still with the same way of talking. I mean, that's, an indictment on them in a way, because women, I'm fully willing to say, are, incredibly capable to reason and so on too. It's just that it's not their overriding nature, in the same way that it's not a man's overriding nature to be this detailed, nurturing individual who would, feed and be right there for a baby all the time. That's not really a man's nature. A man can do that. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I've done lots of that with our children. But it's not really the nature. It's outside their comfort zone, their sort of equipment, their DNA, if you will, right? So therefore, the two working together, that's why the family was so valuable and so strong and so effective in raising up adults, because you have to have the germination of a stable, wholesome, healthy child, which the mother would do, and infused with the values of the family and the culture and what have you, with which the man could then help to teach how to deal with the world, right? And if you just have one and not the other, then there's something missing. I mean, there's lots of evidence that shows the detriment of single motherhood on children. It's the most dangerous environment for kids to grow up in. It's been proven over and over again. Not quite so much with single fathers, because there's not as much study and it doesn't happen as often. But nevertheless, we see the results in society over and over again, right? And I just thought I wanted to share that. Probably it's common knowledge to a lot of people, but I just wanted to share that because it came to me very, very clearly today that there's these clear roles, and when we bust up that partnership, the real victim is the children in the middle, because they're not getting both sides. There's two valuable components, both from the man and the woman, that get infused into the development of a child. And when you rip one of them out of there, that child is disabled, I would say, to that extent. And I'll just leave everybody I'll leave with this basic comment at the end here, which is that when we recognize this, we can have empathy for people who look batshit crazy out there in the social sphere now, who are pulling their hair out over whatever cause because they can't handle what somebody says. They're ill-equipped. It's like me going to Japan or whatever, and I don't understand the language. I was never introduced to it. It's completely foreign to me. So they might have empathy for me because I can't understand their language. They would understand. They wouldn't say, well, I'm just a stupid person or whatever. No, I just was never introduced to it. Well, some of these people out there in the world who are going batshit crazy right now, they don't know the value of what men can deliver for them in terms of their upbringing. They probably never had an introduction to an honest, caring father. Or an honest, caring mother. I don't know. Generally, father, because that's usually the case. But something to think about anyways. Steve here again, great chatting. If you like what I do, please like, subscribe, and share. And it's wonderful to see a bunch of new people showing up on the channel. And we'll talk soon. Bye for now.